President Jacob Zuma will have his day in court. Joining us now via London, via Skype, is former ANC MP and somebody who resigned over the arms deal and wrote about it, Andrew Feinstein. Mr. Feinstein, thank you for being with us. I think you resigned early 2000, so my first question, which you didn't hear earlier, was how do you feel today?
Well, I feel very good for South Africa, because I think this is a vindication of our democracy, of our justice system, and the rule of law. Unfortunately, this should have happened 12 or 13 years ago, when Shaun Sheikh was charged. The intention of prosecutors was to charge Jacob Zuma with Mr. Sheikh. But of course, it's far better late than never. And bearing in mind that Shaun Sheikh was found guilty of corrupting Mr. Zuma, I look forward to there being a court process in which Mr. Zuma faces the legal consequences of his actions.
And he was implicated in that Shaun Sheikh judgment. So was Thompson CSF, the French arms company. Tell us what has happened to Thompson's, to Alain Tetard, the guy at the helm. What has happened to all these people who are involved in serious claims?
Well, unfortunately, as is the case with the arms trade around the world, nothing has happened to them. But this gives us hope that legal proceedings could be brought against the successor company to Thompson CSF, which is known as Thales, and against Mr. Tetard himself. We'll now have to look at what possible proceedings could be brought against the company. But in addition, there is the possibility of legal action against a wide variety of players in the arms deal. This really could be the moment at which the edifice of arms deal corruption starts falling apart. And if so, there are many individuals and companies, as well as public officials, who could face legal action as a consequence of their behavior in relation to the arms deal.
So we mentioned the R500,000 bribe. The courts found that there was a conspiracy, Shaun Sheikh, Jacob Zuma, and Thompson's to pay this bribe to Zuma for protection. Just tell us some of the other serious claims, some of the names that we'll all start hearing about again as South Africans.
Sure, absolutely. I think, first of all, it's important to remember it wasn't just a one-off payment of R500,000. The deal stipulated that Mr. Zuma would be paid R500,000 a year. Yeah. Now, in terms of the other sorts of allegations, British police authorities have stated that BAE Systems, the British company that very controversially won the contract to provide the jet trainer fighters, paid £115 million of bribes. And a number of people were named as possible recipients of those, including the defense minister at the time, Joe Modise, his political advisor, Fana Hlongwane, a number of intermediaries, including a gentleman by the name of John Breedenkamp. Then there were allegations that Shaun Sheikh's brother, who was head of procurement in the Defense Force at the time, had requested and received a bribe of $3 million from the German company ThyssenKrupp. There were also allegations that another German company, Ferrostahl, had paid millions of dollars in bribes to various people involved in the transaction. So there are a plethora of allegations, including the Swedish company Saab, who were in partnership with BAE Systems, and who ultimately admitted to paying millions of euros to Fana Hlongwane, the same political advisor to Joe Modise. in addition to which BAE Systems have been accused of providing the then Minister Stella Saghau's daughter with an education in the United Kingdom, a job, housing, education for her children, and various other benefits in kind. So there really are a huge number of allegations against a variety of people involving a number of companies. And this breakthrough that Jacob Zuma will face justice could really open the floodgates to legal action against many of these entities.
That's what I was going to say. What you're describing is really the spotlight being put on how global business is conducted, about how rife corruption is, and presumably it's the same today as it was then. But do you expect pushback from a lot of these international players who won't want to be dragged into this again?
Oh, of course. I mean, this is the nature of the global arms trade and the investigative work that I've done since I left Parliament in 2001. These companies believe that they are above the law. They very seldom face the legal consequences of their actions. You know, South Africa is in no way unique. What happened to us has been happening all over the world. And the tragedy of the democratic South Africa is not that we're more corrupt than anywhere else. It's just that it took such a short time for us to adopt the very tawdry global norms of governance and economics. And these companies really are specialists in avoiding justice. But I think that the prospects of a trial against Jacob Zuma makes things extremely difficult for these companies. And we, amongst others, will be looking to ensure that these companies face the legal consequences of their corrupt actions that have had such a corrosive effect on South Africa's very young democracy.
You say we, will you be involved? Will you be one of the, we believe, about 200 witnesses?
I have been approached by the NPA last year to find out whether I was willing to give evidence against Jacob Zuma, and I indicated that I most certainly was. But in addition to which, I run a small NGO in the United Kingdom called Corruption Watch UK. And we have been involved in investigating corrupt arms deals and attempting to exert pressure on prosecutors to bring prosecutions against those companies and individuals who've been involved in criminal conduct and corruption. So for us, this is a very important moment at which we can redouble those efforts to ensure that all of those involved in the South African arms deal face their days in court, just as Jacob Zuma will.
Final quick question. People were talking about the nuclear deal making the arms deal look like small change. The volume of transactions are now so huge that this maybe is small, but is it still a good example, a good symptom of that corruption that you're talking about?
It's a very good question in the sense that the nuclear deal would cost South Africa R1.5 trillion. The arms deal cost South Africa 70 billion rand of what I believe was predominantly wasteful and unnecessary expenditure. And we estimate there was about $300 million of bribes paid. The nuclear deal would make that seem like small change, but I would certainly hope that the new administration in South Africa under President Ramaphosa will soon consign any prospects of that nuclear deal to the dustbin of history. I think that why the arms deal has such resonance is because it was the first major corruption scandal of the democratic era. And it therefore has set the tone for governance in South Africa since around 1999-2000. And therefore, if there is the prospect of ensuring that the South African public are made aware of exactly what was done in their name with their money, because let's not forget that the 70 billion rand is taxpayers' money. It didn't belong to Jacob Zuma or Thabo Mbeki or Joe Modise or anyone else. This is the money of the people of South Africa. And I think if we can show that there are legal consequences for what was the first egregious crime of corruption in the democratic era, that will enable us to start a new chapter, a clean chapter of honest, accountable, transparent governance that delivers for the poorest in our society.
All right, thank you so much for your time this evening. Andrew Feinstein, former ANC politician who has written extensively about the arms deal, who resigned over the arms deal and will be a witness in that trial as it moves forward. Let's chat